This video is brought to you by TogetherBudget.com. Welcome to this section of Mastering Real Estate Investing Basics. Today, we're going to talk about understanding investment objectives.
That's right. Having a clear understanding of your financial goals is crucial before diving into real estate investing.
Exactly. So, let's start with the basics. What are personal financial goals?
Well, personal financial goals typically involve replacing your income, saving for retirement, or achieving specific milestones like buying a dream home.
That's right. And it's essential to understand that everyone's goals are unique and influenced by their individual circumstances.
Absolutely. What about risk tolerance? How does that fit into the picture?
Risk tolerance is another critical aspect of understanding investment objectives. It's about being comfortable with the possibility of losing some or all of your initial investment.
That makes sense. And what about expected returns? How do you determine what you're hoping to achieve?
When it comes to property types and markets, there are several key distinctions that investors need to be aware of. Can you walk our listeners through some of the main differences between residential and commercial properties?
Absolutely. Residential properties, such as single-family homes or apartments, account for a significant portion of the real estate market. They're typically used for personal housing, rather than business purposes.
That's a great point. Commercial properties, on the other hand, are typically used for business purposes, such as office space or retail stores.
Exactly. And commercial properties often come with higher purchase prices and ongoing expenses, but they can also offer higher returns through rental income and potential appreciation in value.
What about industrial properties? How do they fit into the mix?
Industrial properties are used for manufacturing, warehousing, and logistics. They often come with high ceilings, large spaces, and specialized equipment requirements.
Let's dive into mortgage options. What are some of the most common types of mortgages, and how do they impact cash flow management for real estate investors?
That's a great question. There are several types of mortgages, including fixed-rate mortgages, adjustable-rate mortgages, and government-backed loans like FHA and VA loans. Can you elaborate on the differences between these options?
One of the most important considerations for real estate investors is cash flow management. What strategies can you share with our listeners to ensure they're maximizing their returns and minimizing their expenses?
Cash flow management is crucial in real estate investing. One strategy is to focus on acquiring properties with high rental income potential, but low operating costs. Another approach is to implement energy-efficient upgrades and smart home technologies to reduce utility bills.
Creative financing techniques can be a game changer for real estate investors. Can you walk us through some examples of creative financing strategies, such as subject-to or lease options?
Subject-to and lease options are two common creative financing strategies that can provide unique benefits to both buyers and sellers. Subject-to allows the buyer to take over the existing mortgage and become the new owner, while lease options give the buyer the right to purchase the property in the future.
Let's dive into the crucial aspect of cash flow and returns. When evaluating a property, it's essential to calculate the cash-on-cash return.
I see what you mean. So, walk us through how to do that. That makes sense. How do we calculate gross yield?
Gross yield, also known as cap rate, is calculated by dividing annual rent by the property's purchase price.
I see a distinction between cash-on-cash return and gross yield. Can you elaborate?
Now let's move on to net operating income, or NOI.
I'm familiar with NOI, but can you break it down for our listeners?
When it comes to risk management and due diligence, the first step is to identify potential risks associated with a property. This includes evaluating the local market, understanding local regulations, and assessing the physical condition of the property.
That's right. And how do you recommend our listeners start this process?
Well, I always tell my students to start by doing some research on the local market. Look at sales data, rental rates, and occupancy rates for similar properties in the area.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about conducting property inspections? Is that something our listeners should do themselves or hire a professional? Let's talk about due diligence. What are some key things our listeners should be looking for when evaluating a property?
Due diligence is all about verifying the information provided by the seller or landlord. This includes reviewing financial statements, assessing the condition of the property, and checking for any outstanding liens or debts.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about environmental hazards? Should our listeners be looking into things like lead-based paint or asbestos?
When it comes to local regulations, our listeners need to be aware of zoning laws, building codes, and any other ordinances that may impact the property.
That's a great point. And how do you recommend our listeners stay up to date with these changes?
This tutorial is brought to you by Malik Abwalzait.